projects done this fall? Too many?
Too many.
Not enough help?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I took a tour of the 911 center this past week. 'Cause now that I'm on the county board, I take a tour of a department, or 2 departments every week. And the 911 center was just fascinating. Just fascinating. You ever been over there?
I have not.
It's a nice facility.
It's a huge, huge room. And I was asking the director, he was saying that they're short of help over there, quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I was saying, well,
It's
was that,
people who do
is
that
that
job for
stress?
$15 an hour.
Because it's a stressful
It's insane.
job. He said, well, that's a problem. Well, is it the salary that you are having trouble recruiting? I said, well, that's part of it. He said, you know what the biggest part? I couldn't guess it. Typing. These younger people don't know how to type. They know how to do the computer, but they don't know how to type.
They have fast phones.
Well, let's get going. If our new member comes in, that'd be great. I'm gonna call the November meeting of the Traffic, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Commission
In progress.
to order. Are we set?
Yes.
So,
Please note that all members are present, except our new member who might come in yet. Approval of the Monday, November 21st Commission agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Dan, is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Approval of the Monday, October 17th meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve. Motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Regular business. Consideration and possible action on the report of the police department on the monthly traffic enforcement unit traffic safety plan. Okay, Lieutenant?
We actually got a lot to talk about today.
Good.
Well, it's not really good. It's two fatalities last month.
2?
Yeah, we had 2 separate fatalities. One was at, one was on Mather and Harrison Street. It was on the 27th at 7:03 PM. That was a pedestrian crossing the road. It was a dark night. It was no moon out. It was really dark. Driver wasn't speeding excessively. If he was speeding at all, there was a person following him, a witness to it. Said the truck was only going about 30 to 25 zone, so it wasn't excessively speeding, if at all.
Just couldn't see the guy, huh?
Didn't see the guy. There's video of the incident. It looks like he's driving along. You don't really see, because it's such a dark night and dimly lit area. All of a sudden you see the pedestrian in front of the headlights. No time to really stop or whatever. Bigger truck hit the pedestrian. He went down to the ground. Was hemorrhaging pretty bad from his head, and the driver stayed on scene, was cooperative, went and volunteered to give a sample of his blood for, wasn't intoxicated. There may have been drug use in the system or whatever. If there was, that's gonna come out in the toxicology report, so we won't know that until the lab gets the results back, but he passed all the sobriety tests at the scene. So, so that's the first one. Not really a whole lot that, I don't know what could have been done differently. I think it's just a matter of circumstances, the wrong place at the wrong time. Dark street. I don't know the condition of the pedestrian, whether he was intoxicated or impaired in any way. That may have led to it also, because he should have been able to see that car.
Is there a toxicology test on the victim in the case like
Yes,
this?
yes. Typically, the medical examiner's office will do that.
Is that the intersection date?
So a traffic reconstruction unit was called out and took over for the reconstruction of that case.
Was the victim in the crosswalk?
It's a unmarked crosswalk at that location. So it's, you can see there's no white line going across.
Curb ramp, so, yeah, legally it constitutes a crosswalk, but it was at the intersection?
He was at the intersection crossing Mather. So he was at, I don't know if it was exactly at the intersection, it was near the other side of the intersection, right over there.
I'm just curious if it was mid-block or intersection related?
No, it was close to that intersection, whether or not it was actually in the crosswalk, I'm not sure.
See one street light here.
And that's, I think, the only thing that really kind of, oh wait, let me think, maybe it was,
This is looking eastbound towards Stone.
it might have been closer to mid-block then, because the street light wasn't right under the scene where it happened, over the scene where it happened. So, and I don't know if maybe that tree gave some shadows or whatever, I don't know. The angle that we had from a surveillance camera from somebody's house is not the same view that the driver is getting from behind the wheel. So, but we'll know more when the toxicology comes in from the driver to see if there was any kind of impairment or whatever.
Okay.
So that was the first one. The second one made a lot more headlines because that was the excessive speed on Mason Street at Oneida that occurred the night before Halloween. Thank God it wasn't on Halloween. On October 30th, 7:40 p.m., Mason, Oneida Street, there was a small white car traveling. The speed estimates right now from video footage. So what they did was they have the surveillance cameras captured the crash on video from Walgreens. They take the segments of the video and they determine distance from one frame to the next frame. And if they know the frame rate of the video, they can estimate speed. They estimate the speed of the car at 124 miles an hour before the crash. Basically, the car was racing another vehicle east on Mason Street. The light at Oneida turned red for eastbound traffic. Northbound traffic started to go. Even if they saw the car, there would have been no chance for them to react in time. It was going so fast. Just clipped the front end of the car going northbound on Oneida. Half a second more would have been a T-bone collision, would have been fatal for the driver of the car going north. But it clipped the car. That car then spun sideways, hit a vehicle going westbound, stopping for the light, the red light, smashed into the front end of that car, and then spun all the way down to the entrance to the Public Works garage on the west side. So a full city block before it had enough friction to slow down and come to a stop. The driver and a front passenger got out of the car. Their friend, 17-year-old, was in the back seat, either dead or dying at that point. And they fled the scene, jumped into the car they were racing with. The other car stopped. They jumped into that car and took off from the area. They found out through investigation of who had the car, and it was a 15-year-old. I'm sure you've all seen the news. A 15-year-old girl. She had taken the car from her mother, and we went and talked to the mother, and she said, yeah, my daughter must have the car, because she didn't even realize it wasn't there. So she, we got her, she turned herself in the next day. Obviously, she knew we were looking for her. There was probably drugs involved. With that, we won't know because we didn't catch up to her until the day after, so we can't do any toxicology reports or anything on her. And she's going to be tried as, they're working to try her as an adult for the reckless homicide. We had a number of people call in afterwards, tell us that they have video footage of that car from their home surveillance cameras or some businesses speeding all around the west side before this incident occurred. I don't know if there was any calls specifically about it. but even if we get a call, the car's speeding on a side street or whatever, by the time we get there, obviously at those kind of speeds, that person's gone. There's no indication that if we had found the car and gotten behind it and tried to stop it, that she would have stopped. Driving that kind of recklessly throughout the whole west side, there's very unlikely that she would have stopped for the police.
Well, if she was 15, she probably didn't even have a license, did
No,
she?
of course not, no license.
No.
So that's unfortunately one that there really is no way to prevent that other than to find a way to capture the driver before the crash. But if they had taken off at those kind of speeds, the police would not have pursued because it would have just added more reckless, high speeds into a chase, and we don't want to be pressuring that person to drive even faster and more reckless. So even if the police did see the car, attempted to stop it, if it took off from them, we wouldn't really have an ability to stop the vehicle at that point. So it's a very, very unfortunate thing. The people in the two other cars were uninjured or had extremely minor injuries, didn't even have to go to the hospital or anything. Just maybe some cuts from some glass on their hands trying to get out of the cars, but that's about it. So we got really lucky in terms of the other drivers on the road. Unfortunately, 17-year-old, he's from Florida, has been staying in Milwaukee and came up here to visit some family. Was not in school up here, I don't know the circumstances behind him leaving Florida, but, so that's the other one. So we had another one, a near one, I don't know did we talk about it last month, or did it not make the meeting last month? The hit and run on Webster, that one was, yeah, I think we talked about that one? Yeah, that was right before the meeting, so. But that gentleman survived, so. That's about it. I mean, that's the major things. We just got our traffic grants in in October. Our traffic grants come in for the following year, so we're able to get some more task force out there, get some more OWIs, and that'll be ramping back up, especially with the holidays. We are going to have on November 2nd, we're going to be working, December 2nd, that's the Friday, I think, working with the Brown County Sheriff's Department, in particular at Packerland and Mason. That's been a problem area we've discussed. A lot of our traffic meetings, a high number of crashes. It's probably the most dangerous intersection, one of the highest crashes in that area. So we're going to have an operation from 3 to 7 p.m. Targeting that area. There will be signs up saying that it's a high enforcement area, and we'll be making.
Why would you do 3 to 7? Why not earlier? Because you're talking about a bunch of students who are there, aren't you?
It's not necessarily the students. It's there are some crashes there just because of the high volume of students that are coming out of Southwest. But that's a high crash area, regardless of students. There's a large number of we've discussed it at other traffic meetings about the left turn. Turning on the red is another issue at that intersection. But the left turn is a big one because the semi trucks coming eastbound, turning north onto Packerland. Anybody that's coming westbound to turn south onto Packerland, they have a very difficult time seeing past those trucks. And so they pull forward without kind of blindly not being able to see past those trucks, and there's cars coming eastbound. So we're gonna have some speed enforcement, seatbelt enforcement in the area, and we'll have any of those violators. We're planning on having an officer at the intersection in an unmarked car doesn't look like a police car. They'll be calling out the violations, and we'll have officers in all the directions. Red light running is another one at that intersection that's makes it really dangerous. So we'll have him calling out violations, and then we'll have officers down the road pulling over the cars. So,
Okay. Anything else, Lieutenant?
nope, I think that's
I
about
have a
it.
question for you.
Yeah.
So if I looked right, can you explain why traffic stops decreased in October? Or traffic stops?
Where are we at?
Oh, yeah.
It looked like August, we were really high, and now we've been downhill climb.
Yeah, well, like I said, the grants, we were waiting for the grants to get approved. We can't, when we do the traffic grants, that adds a lot to our numbers with the OWI task force and the click it or ticket grants. So we had to wait till those got approved before we could put anybody out on the road in October for that grant money.
But are those grants designed just for that, or also speeding?
No, the speed wave grants run in the summertime. That adds to the numbers in the summer. So there's a lot more traffic stops in summer months because the speed wave grants come through for, I think it's May through August. That's when I don't quote me on those months. I can't remember the exact months that they come in, but they have to be spent during a certain time from the state. So that helps with our numbers in the summer. So that inflates our numbers in the summer when we have that grant money coming in. And then, of course, just with more people out and about in the summertime too.
So are you suggesting we will see a downhill?
I
rest
think
of the year?
I think if you'll compare it to graphs from previous years, I think it'd be pretty similar. It follows a regular pattern. I mean, you can see at the beginning of the year, we were really low. It's cold out. There's not as many people out. In the wintertime, it's not, summertime is obviously more people out and about, more people traveling, more people doing things. So it's a more active time for drivers and for police.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Good question. Anything else? Is there a motion to receive and place in file?
Motion to receive and place in file.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Very good. Thank you, Lieutenant. Initial request, consideration, possible action by the Department of Public Works that the city enter into a memorandum of understanding with Georgia Pacific Broadway LLC for the request to install rectangular rapid flash beacon system on South Broadway. Okay, Dave, do you want to take that?
Yes, thanks. So GP and the project team, Project Cinco, they're a primary contractor with Wolf Construction, and they approached us at the onset of this project. We met, as a matter of fact, in this room here. They had gone over some of their drawings and some of the phasing of the project for that plant expansion. And as part of the redevelopment and reconstruction, they're going to be temporarily relocating some of the employee parking and then creating some parking for what they call craft contractors. This would be any of the trades that are coming in and doing work. So the request is actually somewhat multifold because of the dynamic nature of the project. They were asking for that craft contractor crossing to build one, put an RRFB in that location, and then once the project is nearing its completion and the trades start to go down, then we would actually build a permanent crosswalk, in essence kind of replacing what was there prior to the project. It's slightly being relocated, but then move those devices over to that location. So this is something that we've worked with them cooperatively, and they agreed to, because it's their traffic, their pedestrian traffic, they're doing this, that absorb the cost of all of this, and so we agreed. We did purchase the materials and install them and everything, since this is the regulatory devices for street right away. So that really still comes under the purview of our department. You know, we don't want them putting in some inordinate timing or anything like that. So we really have kind of the keys still to it, but because of the nature of the pedestrian movements that are happening there, it's really to their benefit at this
So they're gonna
point.
put the employee parking lot eventually on the west side of Broadway?
Correct. They'll have some over there. I know they're gonna have, because obviously where they're expanding, they're taking up some of that parking, so, you know, they still have the same need and capacity, well, they'll have actually more because of the expansion, so, you know, some of it will be south of there and some of it will be west. So overall, like I said, we worked out the agreement on this, and their attorneys talked to our attorneys, and you'll see, and it was attached to the agenda, all the terms and conditions. Probably the thing that would be the most interest to everyone would probably be, not necessarily the signatures, but really what they are. So this diagram will show you, zoom out a little bit. You can see Liberty Street here, Lombardi, this is where the signal is right now. So, yeah, the existing crosswalk was over here, and as you can see, it's gonna permanently be moved a little bit south of there, including the driveway. Right now, they have a temporary crossing that goes right here for the employees, because they do have some that are parking across the street now. So this is in, and then I was thinking of the craft crossing that's actually over here, and this is where the rapid beacons are located now. So when these dry up, then they get moved down to here. So it's really just more or less of a formality that we need to bring to council to get the clerk and the mayor's signature. So I
Okay.
figured this would be the appropriate committee for that to be heard.
Okay,
So just looking.
is there any
for approval.
questions? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, it's been moved by Kasia, is there a second?
Second.
Second by the Alder. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Alder Burnett, you've got one here. Postponed from a previous meeting. Consideration possible action on request from Alder Burnett to install stop signs or signs at Lafayette Drive and Candle Way.
Alder?
Do you object?
Yeah, come on.
Okay. When,
We're pretty informal
when you're
here.
voting, I have to fight the temptation to say aye or nay. I'm not used to this. My apologies.
Well, you usually are nay, aren't you?
No, no, just on the important things, just on the important things. Anyways, good one. So, thank you for holding off. I did talk to Mr. Hanson at the last meeting, and I was unable to attend in person, but I needed to get a little more information with the request. So the request, and I'll let Mr. Hanson get into a little more of the details, but basically, from what I understand, there are yield signs in this intersection already. One of the questions that he had was, where would the proposed stop signs go? And the people who came up with this request would want to replace the yield signs with stop signs. There's a subdivision or some growth there, some residential lots that are being developed, and there's a number of people, or at least the ones who have contacted me with concerns with the number of children and speeding vehicles, and I'll let you all take over from there, and I'll answer any questions if you have them.
Mhm.
That gives a good background, I think.
Okay, Dave?
Sure. So the intersection itself, just to give you some history, to the east here, this is what's called Pine Acres subdivision. This is actually built starting in 2019, and you can tell this area is actually pretty new. So there's actually a number of homes, I think it's got over 50% occupancy already. Street lights we installed and everything, and so it's a fully functional subdivision at this point in time, some available lots. Upon this opening, Alder Burnett did contact me back in 2019, maybe early 20, and we actually brought it forward to Traffic Rec and Ped Commission here for the installation of yield. So initially it was an uncontrolled intersection. I mean, before this was here, it literally was just a stub street.
There's just a T there right now.
Yeah, yeah, and right now it's a T, yeah, but like about when a hand is, I mean, that's literally about as far as the street went prior to construction. So there was literally no traffic control at the intersection itself, but once it opened up, the elder contacted, put the request in, and we all agreed that a yield sign would be appropriate, you know, for the T, the head of the T coming in, to have that traffic yield. So, upon it being open, this traffic still is pretty low. You know, there really isn't, this isn't like a real good cut through, let's just say, you know, because all the people that are in this area, if they need to get to Hazelwood, they're gonna, you know, you can kind of see, you know, a lot of them probably still just go up this way and head out. Do some of them go this way? I mean, it's more turns and everything, so I don't really think it's an added convenience to do that, unless they're just curious about the status of some of the homes being built. That'd probably be about it. So I don't think you're really seeing a lot of change of patterns. I think that the predominant trip generators coming out of this subdivision are really just the people that are living there and some that are maybe on this street. So it is, well, like I was saying, I conducted a crash investigation to see if we have anything since it opened up, and we have no crashes, so no news in this case is very good news. We don't want crashes. So that was the predominant question, as the elder had just stated, was whether or not they were looking for just to change the one-way yield to a one-way stop, or if it was actually to install lights on all approaches. So many of you know that are on this commission know that in order to put a multi-way stop in, that it should be studied, looking at the traffic patterns. There are certain reasons why multi-way stops are put in. And as you've heard me say time and time again, we don't put them in for speed control because there's ancillary effects that actually occur at unwarranted locations. So, but correct me if I'm wrong, Alder, is it just the one-way stop request? Because it sounded like it was just a replacement.
I thought there was two yield signs, my apologies. So you're saying it's only one yield sign
Correct.
existing? Okay.
Correct, that the yield comes in, the traffic comes in here, they yield. So a yield is a stop condition in the presence of two or more conflicting road users. So in this case, you know, it really is a low volume location. I know I live in the area, and I actually walk in and travel it from time to time. So.
What's another street, Spring Drive?
Which direction?
Over
This
on the
way?
right.
This
The
is
park-
Lafayette.
No, by Parkwood. The other, you go into that subdivision, the other street.
Are you talking to the north?
No.
Because this is a T
No,
right here.
south.
To
Crestwood Springs, perhaps? Did you see Springs?
This is
Yeah.
Parkwood right here.
Yeah, Parkwood and,
This is a cul-de-sac right here. There's two cul-de-sacs. You have one right here, and then you have another one right here.
no, we go to the right. That street right there, that street.
Oh, this is Crestwood Springs.
Yeah, what's that, Parkwood?
And
Is that
Parkwood
a
is right
yield
here.
or a stop sign?
At this location?
Yeah.
Don't know. We'll check. Yields. So it's a two-way yield right now, Crestwood Springs for Parkwood. And Parkwood serves more or less as a neighborhood collector street. It goes across west of South Point and into another subdivision. So Parkwood does serve, you know, it gets more traffic than the rest of the streets do, but it's not technically a collector street. South Point is more of the collector of the area.
No, I was thinking if we were gonna change one, we should change both. I think that's where we come up with two.
well, the only thing is, the other one is a T. This isn't a T, right?
Correct. This is a four-way.
It's an offset four-way.
Right. Yeah, it's got, you know, a little skew to it, but that's about it. Now, just to show you what this one looks like. So, as you can see, we have the name of the street, Assembly here, but we don't have a yield on it at this point. So this is 2016, so you'll see this is what it used to look like. So now this cuts through, goes into the subdivision, and we placed a yield sign here. I know we took this down and put this assembly in a little bit more conspicuous location. But the thing I wanted to point out too is that, as you come up over here, that's Hazelwood Lane, that's up to the north. And it's only 300 feet, and we pretty much need to have that entire view up to the intersection for intersection sight distance to be met, because at 30 miles an hour would be about 335 feet,
So, Dave, does that tree then cause any visibility issues?
Good question. It looks like it does on here.
I mean,
The only thing I would caution you is I know that those Google vehicles, sometimes the height of those cameras are a little on the high side. The number that we use for engineering purposes is 3.5 feet. 3.5 feet is, when someone sitting in a lower profile vehicle, we have to design at that level. Now, someone in a pickup truck, of course, is going to be a little bit higher than that, but 3.5 is what we use. I mean, it's a good question.
yeah, I mean, multiple thoughts. If that is actually a street tree in the public right of way, then our Parks Department could actually trim it. And then, what's the view looking the other way?
Right. And just on that point, real quick, if it is in the right of way, which I'm not sure if it is, if it's a terrace tree or not, yes, Park Rec and Forestry would trim it. If this is on private, it's
owner's
basically gonna be the
responsibility.
private property owner's responsibility.
Right.
Sometimes it's just easier for us to go and trim, but at the same time, if it's their tree, we really shouldn't be
Yep.
going in there. But I've worked with the property owners before. I'll work with inspection department, and then just, they'll put a case together on it or whatever.
Sure.
They call it a ticket, and then they just go and then work it out. And it's usually not too big of a deal. People usually understand.
Yeah, I'm just
And-
trying to paint
yeah.
the picture here, whether
Yeah, and then this is,
the issues at hand, that we're speeding, it's just general safety concerns, is the speed down the main road there? Is it, is that being used as a cut through instead of the next road to the west?
the next road to the west would be South Point.
South Point, okay.
And again, I do live in this area, so I actually know this, and I can tell you, I don't use it as a cut through. I mean, because there's really there's no reason to take it as a cut through. As a matter of fact, I think it would give you, like, there's more turns, there's more intersection control that would be needed if you would do that. Because you have this, so I mean, any traffic that's coming this way just to go left, you have an all-way stop here, so I mean, that's very convenient. And then you just go south or north onto South Point, so it wouldn't be a convenient cut through. I mean, I wouldn't think it's used for that at all. I mean, so I think the people that are really using this are just going to be the
Neighborhood
residents themselves. Yeah, the one thing, like I said, I wanted to make mention with that was the 300 feet, so I think you make a good point. We should be able to see all the way up to the intersection. If not, we can always get that tree trimmed or ordered to be trimmed. But the other thing, and I know I mentioned it in my agenda report, was that there is a considerable downslope there. I mean, it's higher than most streets would be. It's probably verging on 10%, which is the max of what we would probably construct roads at. So, yeah, I would just say in the wintertime, that obviously could create problems with people coming off of here and then being forced to stop. And again, anecdotally, I mean, knowing these numbers and doing this job for coming up on 17 years, I can pretty much tell you what warrants. We have 0 crashes, already verified that. It wouldn't meet the volume warrants, you just don't have it out here. It's a very calm neighborhood, I guess you'd say. You don't have an assignment right-of-way issue at this location at all. That's not what it is. So, I mean, and if it's for speed control, again, Federal Highway Administration says, thou shalt not put them in for speed control because it creates other ancillary issues.
So if it doesn't meet the warrants, then Dave, is it worth, I mean, can we ask the alder, what exactly are the speeding complaints?
Yeah, if it's okay.
Sure.
And I'll just read that. There's a couple that lives right where the stop sign is on the other side. and then another person who reached out to me, and these are just some of the notes that I wrote down. People, according to this person, people are using streets for thoroughfares from Cormier and Hazelwood. I think their main concern is of safety. More and more children, specifically children that are playing or are recreating in Candle, and they're concerned about some of the kids playing. They indicated that one family has 6 kids across the street, another with 3 and another with 2, so they've noticed more and more children in the street, and they're concerned with the yield that, and not at pure stops, that the children are, safety's in jeopardy. They claim that some cars go 40 to 50 miles per hour. Of course, you all know that. But it's hard to prove that, from a person's eyesight. But that's what they claim, and I don't mean to laugh, that's not funny. But I'm laughing because I know it's hard to prove. And then they claim that their dogs, people walking their dogs have nearly been hit a few times. And then another person had emailed that exactly what this other couple said, independent of each other. There seems to be some common themes here. They have a child sign with a flag at the end of their driveway as a way to slow down traffic going down Candle Way. They say a speed bump would be a great solution. I know we don't really do that in Green Bay.
I won't say no to it necessarily. We have a neighborhood traffic calming program, and that's actually one of the improvements that would be part of it, if indeed thresholds are met in the program. Yeah.
This would never get to the thresholds.
You never know.
Well,
You don't know unless you
You
test
don't
it.
have enough traffic, do you?
It has
it's not
nothing
a
to do with
number,
the volume
yeah,
of
it's not a
traffic.
number of
It has
traffic.
everything to do with the 85th percentile, 95th
Oh,
percentile
okay.
speeds. You could have 200 vehicles down there, and if they're all driving 40 miles an hour, it would qualify.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, don't ever discredit that program. I think it's highly underutilized. And quite frankly, I think that more speed humps on our residential streets would probably have a good impact. We can't have police officers, as we know, 24/7 at these locations. It's tough to engineer our way out of something like this with signs. I mean, we've proven, even, we're still getting complaints, and they've got some, pedestrian warning thing at the end of their driveway, and I'm presuming that that's not really effective either. So, any of the signs and markings that we're putting out, as we can tell, are not really doing anything. They're not having an impact on the motorists. So, I've kind of come to this point now in my career where I go, sometimes you do have to physically constrain the motorists. You put the speed humps in, you can go see some on Peters, you can go see some on Farland, and I can tell you that they work. How do I know that they work? I've sampled them. I've sampled in one block, the block that has it on Farland, to the west of Elizabeth, and then to the east. And one guy asked me when we were resurfacing that, he said, I don't like these things, let's get rid of them. And I said, I got some information for you. I said, I got your neighbors one block over that they're sick of the speeding in Farland. And I sampled the speeds there, and they were, I think it was like 33, 34 maybe, and a 25. That's high. They can continue in down the program for speed bumps. They already have them west of Elizabeth. And I said, you want to know what your speeds are? I took them at the same time. What's that? 25? You still want them out? They work. Speed humps work. I think
What is the
they-
this is a digression, but
Yeah.
what is the criteria for putting out speed bumps? Do you have to go through the calming procedure?
Without going through all the details of the program, I'll try to simplify it as this. People have a complaint to speeding. They actually complete the application, which is online. It gets to my office, I make an evaluation on whether it would qualify per the terms of the program. In a case like this is a residential street, all residential streets, meaning, not because it doesn't mean if it just has houses, it's the hierarchy, the design of the street and everything like that. This is a residential street that would qualify for the program. Then we would look at surveying and sampling the speeds, which obviously we can only do in non-winter months, because the equipment we use will get ripped up by snowplows. But we would sample those speeds, and if they come up, if the 85th percentile is greater than 32 and a 25, it qualifies to continue in the program. If the 95th percentile is over 35, it continues into the program. One or two of those numbers are the markers. I forgot to add one thing before that. There does need to be neighborhood consensus in the program, and a petition would have to be, I shouldn't say petition, it's more signatures. So we look at it as if there's enough people in the neighborhood that have an interest in this, then it's something we would consider. So if you don't have that public buy-in from your neighbors.
But what you're
that's
saying
kind
is you
of
go
a-
through the regular calming procedure then?
Yeah, we just go right through the whole process, and if it continues to meet, and then, who knows, maybe speed bumps are in its future then. I'll be honest with you, I have yet to see one successfully go through. I'll be honest, I'm kind of dissatisfied with that. I mean, it's good that we're not getting some that exceed the thresholds, but sometimes they just lose steam because, people aren't as interested. I have no idea how it would even work on the financial aspect because we haven't even gotten that far. So, and this is all pre-wheel tax, what's went in. Is this something that, it just gets slated for the next time when it's resurfaced, that they would go in? Perhaps, but I don't know. And speed humps are not the things that you remember from 20, 30 years ago that you'd find in parking lots. That, you lose your front end or your muffler on it or something. That's not how these are. I mean, these are designed so that they're friendly for heavy vehicles like fire trucks, public works operations, dump trucks, all of that, garbage,
Plowing.
collection, plowing, all of that. I'd encourage each and every one of you to go to Farland and go to Peters and see what we've done on those streets. And I'll tell you what, I don't get calls and complaints from only that one. I asked for it to be removed in the resurfacing, and I talked them out of it, based off the speeds that we get. So, that being said, I would not discredit that by any means. I think that they have viability. I just think that this community just needs to keep an open mind and embrace this improvement, because I actually think it'll work for them. And we've gotten to that point now, and we hear it all the time. Chief had said it when he was sitting in front of you. The biggest complaint that they get is speeding in neighborhoods. So we have to figure this out somehow.
Dave, it does have to be a resident that starts the process though, right?
Correct.
So if we resurface a road, can't we just automatically put a speed bump in?
Not necessarily.
Gotta show there's a problem and a need.
I guess you could say that, but I just don't understand how it would hurt to add something and be a little bit preventative. But that's not our standard mode of operation.
Can I put something on?
For you alders to look at.
Yeah. Can I put something on the map?
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So just a little background. So when I first met the couple who lived here, this was, again, blocked off. This is all wooded, all forested. So over the years, over a couple of years now, 4 years, the neighborhood has changed quite a bit. This did not exist, and now it does. These did not have houses. They were lots that were, at that point, undeveloped a few years ago. And so little by little, I have seen that neighborhood evolve to the point where yield sign satisfied their concerns, but as they see more and more homes being constructed and more traffic going through, they express that concern. So I don't know how much of this will be developed at some point. I don't know quite what that is back there. And what,
I was just gonna ask you that.
yeah.
Wooded area, is that undeveloped yet?
This is gonna be undeveloped, but the plat for Pine Acres is only this street, and then the extension of Crestwood Springs at the time. And I know just from looking at the property maps that these have got bought out, I believe, by this property owner here, so that no one would ever, I don't know, I mean, they have plans, but it's the same property owner that owns them, I believe. And there's just maybe 2 or 3 4 parcels that will need to be purchased. I think the rest of them are already bought.
How about in the middle of the wooded area? Is that a cul-de-sac in there?
This thing?
No.
I think that's private residence out the back on it. Yeah, there's that one this is that upgrade here, and there's I think it's like a fence, like an automatic fence to get in there. It's a private residence. I think it's a nicer, single family compound, I guess you could call it maybe.
So Alder, there's been an increase of children in this area?
David, were there sidewalks in the area?
No. No, there was some discussion of that on South Point prior to you being there. I think Alderman Tom Sladek was Alder at the time, and it all transpired from looking for an all-way stop here, and we did a more encompassing traffic study that involved looking at various things, and the sidewalk study was part of that, but then the neighbors really didn't want anything to do with that, so it kind of killed that. But, and our safe walk and bike plan, I know that we've got sidewalk, I believe that all of South Point, both sides, West Point, it's slated for under improvement, but it's, it's just kind of there in the plan at this point in time.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the commissioners on this particular issue?
I'd make a
Yeah.
motion to approve and change it to a stop sign.
A one-way stop?
One-way stop.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? The aye has it.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right.
One more, just to bring up something. The residents in that neighborhood can call our community police line, and they can talk to Lieutenant Steve Mahoney. They can borrow a radar gun.
It's a new program.
Yeah, it's a new program, we just started out. They can borrow a radar gun, so they can get some ideas of what cars are actually doing on their roads. If they jot down like license plates and descriptions of the vehicles, we end up sending letters to people that are excessively over the limit and saying, hey, you were caught on radar on a side street, 25-mile-an-hour zone. Just know that people are watching, and we just send letters. Sometimes it's kids, and it's good that the parents are getting these warning letters, basically saying, hey, kid was caught speeding, whatever. But we don't take any enforcement action based off of that because we don't have a sworn police officer witnessing it. But it is something that they can do. It's free. They just gotta call the community police, and they can get some of that data, so they could come with more data in terms of the speed that the cars are actually going.
Right.
Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Alder. Termination reports 4 through 7, is there any ones that we need to take up independently, Dave?
No,
Are you
4
pretty
through
satisfied?
4 through 7 are all interrelated.
Okay.
They're connected to that one request from Randy Scannell with the survey by West High School. So, yeah, we haven't heard any issues from it, so I see no
Okay.
reason to approve them all.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dan, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Temporary parking regulations ordinance update discussion.
Yes, I was contacted by the law department relative to their review of the 90-day trial language that's in our ordinances. So they had noticed that, this is actually some proposal that they have right now. So this, literally what you're seeing there is just a copy of 40-3, which really talks about traffic, bike, and ped commission, and you'll see there's an area here about temporary regulations. So the one thing that they had brought up was that the words not to exceed 90 days was something of concern to them. The reason that was brought up was that they thought, well, what happens if there's a meeting canceled and then we actually have a group of parking regulations that it actually exceeds 90 days? Does that mean that there's kind of this gap here that it's kind of a free-for-all and it's unenforceable? That was their main question, and I agreed with them. I said, you know, I guess it's something that if you want to clarify it, just give us some proposed language. I'll run it by the traffic commissioners and we'll have a discussion on it. Obviously, it's going to be informal at this point and it's informational. There's no action being taken on this, simply because they just wanted to get some feedback from commissioners on this. And then,
So this is going to the city council?
no, not at this point. Again, this is informational, it won't be reported out. Anything that's parking, regulatory in nature relative to ordinance, minus kind of what we do here with this changing zones, like for the parking division, like when they approve rates and things like that, that always goes to the improvement surface commission or committee. So their intention was to actually bring this through INS.
Okay.
But obviously wanted to have a discussion with each of you on this, just to see if you had any questions or concerns on it. Maybe you're proposing some modifications to what they have. But they just wanted to get some feedback on this before they actually take it to INS.
Is there any concern? Questions, comments?
Is the bold
Yeah.
additions?
Yeah, anything
that's
that
the
is
addition.
bold and underlined
Yep.
would be additions, and the strike-through text obviously goes away.
Okay.
So you're seeing, you know, a marked up version of this, but, so if you really look at the core of this, you know, it says trial periods not to exceed, so they're just saying trial periods of 90 days. The commission shall reconsider some temporary regulations prior to the expiration of the 90-day period or at the first meeting practicable thereafter. So that was really the only thing that I had added in there, was this part.
So if they need a 90-day period, then how can we talk about that before the 90 days? Because you have it prior to the expiration.
Right, I think the intention of that was, say that we knew that a meeting would be canceled, if we wanted to shorten it, by any means. So, I don't really see how, or when we would really ever use that, because I think that the 90 days is more of a minimum, in my opinion, just to really kind of get the feedback of people, to really kind of get used to it and see how things are really working. So that's why when they proposed this to me, I said we should probably put something in there that if we can't make that meeting, keep it enforceable up until this time that the traffic commission can meet, and then make a final, really not.
That's reasonable.
So, and that's what this last statement says: any such temporary regulation shall remain in effect until council takes action on the legislation to make temporary regulations permanent. So, it comes to you, and then it goes out on the council report for final adoption and general ordinance approval.
It's just clarification language.
Yeah.
It's
At
not
the end of the day, yeah, this is kind
Yeah.
of,
cleanup then.
it's cleanup work.
Do we need a motion?
No, it's informational,
Just
so
informational.
intentionally we don't want a motion.
Okay.
Just again, looking for feedback, and if you have anything, I can certainly relay it to our law department.
Any comments?
That looks good.
Okay. All right, thank you, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
I did have one thing I wanted to bring up. I mentioned before the meeting to a couple of you. Is there any reason that we couldn't meet starting at 5 o'clock?
No, there's no reason. Earlier. is-
Would that be a problem with anybody? I mean, we'll get you folks back home a half hour earlier. Doesn't bother me at all.
I would like it,
Yeah.
actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'd prefer it too.
okay. Can we have a motion to that effect?
I'm just gonna go from work to year anyway, so.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'll make a motion that we move all future meetings to 5 p.m.
Okay,
I will second it.
there is a second.
Okay.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Well, good, that won't interfere with my cocktail.
So that'll start January 16th?
No. Okay, next meeting is January 16th. We normally do not meet in December. Isn't any business that we need to take up in December? Okay.
No, there isn't, and yeah, it's just for the newer commissioners, the reason that we canceled December is because it's typically the week of Christmas, and there's a lot of people that are vacationing or taking time off with family, and off of work, so it just seemed to work out better for everybody, so unless you guys really do want to meet, but there wasn't anything pressing or anything like that.
Okay.
Quick question for Dave. So since you guys started the traffic calming program, about how many applications do you think you've had in?
Oh, dozens,
Dozens?
dozens,
And
yeah.
not one of them has passed?
What's that?
And not one of them has met the criteria for traffic calming implementation?
Correct.
Okay, maybe it's time we take a look at that whole process.
Yeah, maybe the thresholds are too high.
Right.
Well,
We
the
had tons of-
engineering thresholds for the speed are, they're set by Federal Highway and other groups
Okay.
that set those standards. But I think the process by which maybe needs to be looked at, because if we're rejecting every single one of these because our process says that we're rejecting them, maybe it's the process that needs to be looked at. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
just a thought. Because I applied for the program as a resident, and there was some serious concern in my neighborhood, and that the project didn't go anywhere.
Well,
I had the
I
support.
did
I
the
had-
same thing on
Yeah.
Short Street.
Yep, I had the support from the neighborhood. We had all our ducks in a row, and unfortunately, it fizzled out.
Mhm.
So maybe it's time that we take a look at that program, the process.
Dave, could you send out the format of the calming procedure? I know there's a little
It's all
booklet or
online.
something, isn't there?
It's all
Is it online?
Mhm.
Okay, where would you go online to get that?
I'll show you.
Yeah, I went through the same process and we got turned down.
Yeah. I'm curious at what stage these projects are falling short.
Well, that's a good point, Dan.
So as a commissioner, you want to put something on the agenda?
Yeah, maybe for the January meeting, we can have an item included to at least have a review or a summary of,
Discussion item?
yeah.
Yeah, why don't we do that, Dave? I think that's a great idea.
Can someone just so we have formal
Oh,
process,
you
can
wanna make a
someone just
motion to
email
that
it to
effect?
me?
Sure.
No, no, we
on
have
the wording?
What's
Oh,
that?
you want,
Yes, the email.
you want some wording on it?
Yeah, just
Or
so
you
I
have to
know
email?
exactly what you're looking for.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
It's your request, so just email it to me.
Okay,
And,
sure, I'll come
I
up
can
with
get it on
some
the agenda.
rough language and,
Okay,
Right.
great.
And let me just double check with Celestine. I know that Celestine usually writes all the requests going through the clerk's office, so you can just give that to me and then I can probably just forward it to her and she can get it on, it's my presumption.
okay.
But anyway, so it's all I did is I just went to the city's website, I went neighborhood traffic calming or just traffic calming, and you'll see all the links to it. So this is the generic page that goes through the policy and measures, and here's the links to the various, like you can actually go bring up the policy itself. You can see it's had a number of that was adopted in 2007, and it's went through 3 revisions, the latest in 2019. So you can go through here, you'll see there's a flow chart that'll show, you know, starting with the report and concern. So this is kind of what I was verbalizing to earlier, but in flow chart format.
So did your department draft this policy?
I drafted it.
You did.
Yeah, I researched, back when I first started here, you know, there was obviously a lot of complaints. I mean, they haven't really gone away. I mean, it's a consistent complaint by residents. And it was my concept to then Director Carl Weber that we implement a program like this. There was a little bit of hesitation, I think, on how we would do it and the way to go about it. But I mean, remain consistent and asking. And eventually he's like, well, let's go ahead and bring it through Improvement Service Committee. And so I presented to them, gave them a draft of it. They came back with a few revisions, questions were answered and things like that. And eventually we brought it back to them a second time. And they approved it, then it went to county council, and so we had the program. So
Mhm.
it's been in place now, I guess, 2007, it's been in place for 15 years-ish. So, yeah, so
Okay.
everything that you need is really out there. Please take a look at it. Just like you said, it's been 15 years, so maybe there are some things that can be changed, and you never know. As things have changed, but,
Getting to what Dan alluded to a second ago, are the thresholds mandated by the state or federal governments, or are they something that we developed?
I put those in as recommendations into it based off of what I thought was the most common thresholds that I found from other programs. I really looked at a lot. I probably looked at 7 or 8 different
Kind of
programs.
best practice.
Yeah, from around the country. I'm a member of ITE, and I go to the annual meeting, and I remember talking with some various agencies, whether it be, I was trying to stick with obviously municipal people, but like Madison too had one, and so I really did my research on what other people were doing to really format this proposal back in 2007. So the thresholds themselves, I mean, there isn't necessarily, like, the METCD is not, they don't establish a threshold for traffic calming. The METCD is actually quite silent on traffic calming measures themselves. It's more or less going to be from AASHTO practice on what would be safe design of such appurtenances. But when it actually comes down to the thresholds, I guess that to me, it's up for debate. I would obviously try to found it in some sort of engineering practice, obviously, not just pick a number and whatever. I mean, obviously you don't want it too low, then all of a sudden we're going to be in a budgetary crisis going, how the heck are we going to fund all these things?
No.
So, I would recommend that upon looking at this document, to try to answer those questions that I've had over the years of how can we fund such a program. I think that is going to make or break something like this, because if I interpret what's out there right now, I think this would be something that potentially you're looking at the actual residents participating in the costs. So to say that speed bumps or speed humps on a road would cost $7,000 or something like that. It's my interpretation, at least on how this thing is put together, that there would be some responsibility of those people that, it's kind of like sidewalks, I mean, there's not a assessment rate, but we would come up with the cost, and we probably would expect some contribution.
Mhm.
So that being said, is that the way to go about it? Is this something that really we should be planning for and having this, be kind of a core service of the city, or is this something above and beyond a core service? To me, that is where I think the success or failure of any sort of changes is going to happen.
Mhm. But the bottom line is you don't want to get the thresholds too low, but you don't want to make them impossible either. And it seems that maybe we're at the impossible stage if nobody's been able to pass the mustard here.
Right. It is, I don't want to say it's difficult to surpass them, but I mean, 32 miles an hour is pretty fast on a 25. And to get a high number of people to do that, I think doesn't happen. I think when people are complaining about these things, myself included, when I see it, it's not that we're seeing consistently high speeds, it's that you're seeing the outliers. And that's what the 95th percentile speed was for. So if it exceeds 35, that's that 5% of people just doing what the heck they want to do and going through there without any regard. That captures. So, I think the research into looking at the thresholds would include, A, doing another survey, looking at what other programs, especially ones that are more recently adopted, find out what their thresholds are. And number 2, I would probably look a little bit closer at some of the research that's happened in the last 15 years relative to pedestrian deaths as compared to speed. And I know that there's tables out there that talk about that. So I would say, you know, an area that doesn't have sidewalk, maybe they have lower thresholds than an area that does have sidewalk, because at least there's some level of protection for the pedestrian in a sidewalked area versus everyone in the street. Wintertime, you got you got snowbanks all over the place, and then these people that are walking. I mean, how many people have dogs? I mean, a lot of people have dogs. There's people that walk the streets all over the place. And, you know, Jesse knows that I live in his district, and I'm in an area where there's no sidewalk, and I see it all the time. So, again, this is just my cursory opinion, that potentially any revisions to the program should factor in something of the presence of sidewalk or not. I think that that definitely could increase the potential for any pedestrian safety, injury or fatalities.
Okay.
Couple of questions. I got a couple of questions.
Yeah, Lieutenant?
Snow-covered streets, if somebody's not familiar with the street, is there another way that they would know that there's a speed hump there? If they're approaching, it's snowing out, there's snow on the street, are they gonna hit the speed hump without enough warning that it's there? Or they put up signs saying speed hump ahead, or?
We sign them.
Okay.
Yeah, there's warning signs. They, you know, so your standard diamond black on yellow sign, it says speed control humps. And we'll put them at whatever that distance would be, probably 200 feet in advance of them. And then at the location itself, you'll see we kind of do this tiger tooth marking that goes in advance. And then at the hump itself, and it's mainly for our plow drivers, we actually will put like a C-channel post with a reflector on it. So they have the warning, they'll know exactly where they are. So, yeah, it's not that we wouldn't warn people, people will know they're there. And obviously if they have issues and, you know, I mean, you can, if you want some interesting viewing, just go to YouTube and start researching some of the people with Ring cameras that post speed hump videos and people that disregard them, and you'll see exactly what happens. I think people will learn very quickly that the street is combed and not to do that again. But yeah, there's one in particular that I watch. I mean, these people actually, it's a pair of residents. They live right next door to each other. So one will get it, and then the other one will get it. So it's always two of them, and they have like episode 29, and you know, I mean, they make a whole big deal out of it on their channel. But yeah, you know, and I don't know, I didn't look up where that street is, but when I looked at it, it kind of looked like it might have been a street that maybe, I don't want to say shouldn't have been called, again, I don't know all the facts, but it looked more like a collector street. And you'll know when you read that collector streets are not included in this program. And there's a reason for that. So when you watch those Ring videos, you don't have a lot of that. Because collectors typically allow a higher speed limit, so you don't want to put them in a location that might kind of, I don't want to say trick people, but you know, I mean, you don't want to create a safety problem at the same time.
But I can also agree with you on the, when there are traffic complaints that come in, we often will put out those speedboard trailers, which, by the way, I forgot to mention, we did get 2 brand-new speedboard trailers with grant money, and I also just got one donated to us. It's a used one from Mitchell Airport down in Milwaukee, but a guy bought it at a government auction, and it's older, and so we're gonna redo some things on it to make it more upgraded so we can get collect data off of it. But that one was donated to us for free, so that was pretty nice. But we do put the boards out there, and we collect the same kind of information that you just mentioned, that the speeders, anything, you know, we can set it to whatever thresholds we want, and there's very few cars hitting those threshold speeds of, you know, 32 or more, 34, 36, whatever. There's not a whole lot of them, and I think people, when they see cars going by at the normal speed, it doesn't even register to them. When they see one car going by speeding, it's, their perception is that all these cars are speeding, when in reality, it's very few, but it's the memorable ones that stick out in their mind. But our data would reflect his almost exactly, that there's very few cars when we put out the speed boards and collect all the data that's on there. It tells them how many.
I will disagree with you, and I will disagree respectfully that a speed board is a behavioral change tool. If you want true speeds, put out speed tubes that are not noticeable, and those will collect the actual speed that people typically will drive that road in.
But we can also have the speed boards collecting data before they're even in sight. So a
And
lot
before
of,
the number flashes and.
yep, it'll mark speed of cars traveling the other direction, away from them. So if it's aiming this way, cars are going that way, it'll collect data from cars that don't know that they're having data collected on them. And they'll also, we can set the distance that we want to collect, so we can get the data before they even come up to the speed board.
That's probably more accurate.
Yep.
Right. They are used as a deterrent tool, I agree with
Yep.
Dan on that. But yeah, that's a great point, because the one measure that you'll get from some of those reports is measures of effectiveness, like, is this board being effective? As in, it's catching the speed before it displays, so let's just say someone's going 32, and if it sees a reduction in that, that's going, success, yes, it's doing its job. So, you know, it is used as a speed deterrent tool, correct, but there is some valuable information to get out of it at the same time. But to your point, Dan, the reason why as part of this program we use the tubes is that we don't want a deterrent effect. We understand it happens, and that's why we go incognito. You know, most people, when they see a road tube out there, they just go, oh, there's counting traffic, well, how many people are on this street? But there's so many things that we can get, so much data off of the arrays that we use. So, yeah, it's the best way to do it. You wanna, and that's why, like, sometimes too, there's different types of methods of collection, and the one that you were talking about with the radar guns, so laser guns, that's actually probably the most accurate way to do it, because you want to get people this really quick and then just go off of it. And, and I don't know how many people really use any speed detectors anymore. I mean, that was kind of a big thing when I was growing up, and then, then they got the laser detectors, they had the X band, the K band, all these, different bands, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't been in someone's car that's had one of those. I don't think they're that popular anymore.
I can't even tell you the last time I saw one. 20 years, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuzzbusters.
Fuzzbuster, right?
Is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, and a second. All in favor, somebody by saying aye. Have a great Thanksgiving and a great Christmas, everyone, okay?